Have you ever met someone who barely speaks? Yet, when they do, everyone in the room stops listening to everyone else? Or maybe you've always felt like you see things other people somehow miss. Not because you're trying to be different, but because your mind naturally notices patterns, questions, and details that others simply walk past. The strange part is, most intelligent people never feel intelligent. In fact, psychologists have found that the people who constantly question themselves are often the ones with the greatest capacity for critical thinking. Meanwhile, people who know the least often feel the most certain. It's one of the biggest paradoxes of the human mind. Real intelligence rarely announces itself. It whispers. And because of that, many highly intelligent people spend years believing something is wrong with them. Maybe you've been called quiet, an overthinker, too sensitive, too curious, too independent. Or maybe people have told you, you think too much. But what if those aren't weaknesses? What if they're signs that your brain processes the world differently? Today, we're exploring 11 psychological signs that research consistently associates with higher intelligence. These aren't movie stereotypes, not genius equations, not perfect grades, not photographic memory. They're subtle behaviors, quiet habits, and ways of seeing the world that often go completely unnoticed. Some of them may surprise you, and the final sign might completely change how you see yourself. Let's begin. Sign number 1. You enjoy being alone. For many people, being alone feels uncomfortable. Silence becomes awkward. The phone comes out, music starts playing, the television goes on, anything, to avoid being alone with their own thoughts. But highly intelligent people often experience solitude differently. To them, silence isn't empty. It's productive. It's where ideas connect, where problems get solved, where imagination finally has room to breathe. Research has repeatedly shown that people with higher cognitive ability often require more quiet time than average, not because they dislike people, but because social interaction consumes mental energy. Their brains are constantly analyzing, reading emotions, noticing patterns, connecting ideas, even during ordinary conversations. That level of processing is exhausting, so instead of seeking constant stimulation, they seek recovery, and they often find it in solitude. History is filled with brilliant thinkers who deliberately protected their alone time, not because they were antisocial, but because their greatest ideas arrived when nobody else was talking. If you've ever cancelled plans simply because you wanted one peaceful evening with your own thoughts, that isn't necessarily loneliness. Sometimes it's exactly how your mind recharges. Sign number 2. You ask more questions than you answer. Children ask hundreds of questions every day. Then, as adults, most people slowly stop. Not because curiosity disappears, but because certainty becomes more comfortable. Highly intelligent people often move in the opposite direction. The more they learn, the more questions appear. Every answer opens another door. Every solution reveals another mystery. Psychologists sometimes describe this as intellectual humility, the understanding that knowledge has limits. Ironically, the smartest people are often the quickest to say, "I don't know," because they understand how much there still is to discover. They aren't trying to sound impressive. They're trying to be accurate. That's why they're comfortable changing their opinions when better evidence appears. To them, being wrong isn't embarrassing. Staying wrong is. And that mindset allows them to keep growing, long after everyone else believes they've already learned enough. Sign number 3. You notice patterns others miss. Imagine walking into a room full of strangers. Most people notice faces. Highly intelligent people often notice relationships. Who avoids eye contact? Who interrupts everyone else? Who secretly leads the conversation? Who feels uncomfortable? Who is pretending to be confident? Their attention naturally searches for patterns, not just in people, but everywhere. In business, music, language, nature, technology, history. One small observation becomes another, until suddenly, an invisible connection appears. This ability is one reason intelligent people often solve problems differently. They don't always think faster. They simply connect information that most people never realize belongs together. To someone watching, it almost looks like intuition, but it isn't magic. It's pattern recognition. Your brain quietly collecting tiny details until they form a picture no one else can yet see. So, if intelligent people enjoy solitude, ask endless questions, and naturally recognize patterns, what comes next? Interestingly, the next signs are often misunderstood. People mistake them for flaws, but psychology suggests they may actually be indicators of a highly analytical mind. Let's continue. Sign number 4. You think about everything. Have you ever replayed a conversation, hours after it ended, wondering if you should have said something differently, or whether someone meant more than what they actually said? Most people call this overthinking, and sometimes it can become unhealthy, but in moderation, it often reflects something deeper. Highly intelligent minds naturally analyze information from multiple angles. Instead of accepting the first explanation, they search for the second, the third, sometimes even the 10th. Their brain keeps asking, "What am I missing?" Research in cognitive psychology suggests that people with higher intelligence often spend more time reflecting before reaching conclusions, not because they're indecisive, but because they recognize that reality is rarely simple. They know first impressions can be misleading, so they slow down. Unfortunately, this habit can also become mentally exhausting, because a brain that constantly searches for better answers rarely finds an off switch. The goal isn't to stop thinking, it's learning when enough thinking is enough. Sign number 5. You get bored easily. This surprises many people. Highly intelligent individuals often become bored faster than others, not because they're lazy, not because they're difficult to satisfy, but because their brain adapts quickly. Once something becomes predictable, the excitement disappears. Imagine playing the same video game every single day for months. Eventually, you already know every level, every challenge, every surprise. Your brain begins searching for something new. The same thing happens in real life. Routine tasks, repetitive conversations, work without creativity can leave an intelligent mind feeling completely unstimulated. Psychologists believe novelty activates the brain's reward system. That's why many intelligent people constantly explore new hobbies, read about different subjects, or suddenly become fascinated by something completely unrelated to their previous interests. To outsiders, it may look like inconsistency, but internally, it's curiosity searching for its next challenge. Sign number 6. You often feel different. Not better than other people, just different. Maybe you've sat in a crowded room, yet still felt strangely alone. Maybe you've wanted conversations that went deeper, conversations about ideas, human behavior, the universe, purpose, instead of endless small talk. Psychologists who study gifted adults have found that many describe a quiet feeling of not fully belonging, not because they reject others, but because they experience the world differently. They notice details others ignore. They ask questions others never ask. They become fascinated by topics most people never think about. Over time, some learn to hide that side of themselves, not because they're ashamed, but because they don't want to seem unusual. The irony is, there are millions of people who feel exactly the same way. They simply haven't found each other yet. And here's something important. Being intelligent doesn't mean knowing everything. It doesn't mean being perfect. It doesn't mean succeeding at everything you try. Intelligence simply changes how you process information, how you solve problems, how you experience the world around you. And sometimes, that difference can feel lonely, but it can also become your greatest strength, because the people who think differently are often the ones who eventually change the way everyone else thinks. And we're only halfway through. The next signs become even more surprising because they reveal behaviors that most people never associate with intelligence, even though psychology does. So far, we've talked about solitude, curiosity, pattern recognition, deep thinking, boredom, and feeling different. But now, we're about to reach the signs that people misunderstand the most. Ironically, These traits often make intelligent people underestimate themselves. Let's continue. Sign number 7. You admit when you don't know something. Imagine two people discussing a difficult topic. The first confidently answers every question, even the ones they know very little about. The second person pauses, thinks carefully, and simply says, "I'm not sure." Most people assume the first person is smarter, but psychology often shows the opposite. Highly intelligent people understand how complex the world really is. The more they learn, the more they realize how much they don't know. Psychologists call this intellectual humility. It's the ability to separate confidence from certainty. A truly intelligent person isn't afraid to say, "I need more information," because for them, being accurate is more important than looking impressive. Ironically, people who know the least often feel the most certain, while those who know the most continue asking questions. That's why intelligence often sounds quieter than ignorance. Sign number 8. You're extremely observant. Have you ever noticed someone lying before they even finished speaking? Or sensed tension in a room without anyone saying a word? Highly intelligent people often notice tiny details that others overlook. A change in someone's voice, a brief facial expression, an unusual pause, a repeated habit. Their brain constantly gathers small pieces of information and builds a larger picture. This isn't mind reading, it's careful observation. Instead of reacting immediately, they watch, they listen, they compare. By the time they speak, they've usually noticed far more than anyone realizes. That's why quiet people are often underestimated. Silence doesn't always mean a lack of ideas. Sometimes, it means the brain is still collecting information. Sign number 9. You feel things more deeply than you show. Many people believe intelligent people are cold, emotionless, purely logical. But psychology paints a very different picture. Many highly intelligent individuals experience emotions more intensely than average. Beauty affects them deeply. Music stays with them. Stories leave lasting impressions. Injustice feels personal. They care deeply, but they don't always show it. Over time, many learn to hide their emotions, not because they don't feel, but because they've realized. Most people won't understand the depth of what they're experiencing. Their emotions become private, not absent, and that emotional depth often fuels creativity. It's why so many writers, scientists, inventors, and artists describe feeling completely consumed by ideas that nobody else could see. Because intelligence isn't only about logic, it's also about sensitivity, the ability to notice, feel, and understand experiences at a deeper level. And that combination can become incredibly powerful. We're almost at the end. The final 2 signs reveal something unexpected because they explain why many intelligent people struggle with self-confidence, even while achieving extraordinary things. Those final signs might completely change the way you understand intelligence forever. We've explored 9 psychological signs, but the final 2 may be the most surprising of all because they explain why some of the smartest people you'll ever meet never realize how intelligent they actually are. Let's continue. Sign number 10. You constantly question yourself. At first, this sounds like insecurity, but psychology tells a different story. Highly intelligent people often question their own opinions, not because they lack confidence, but because they understand how easy it is to be wrong. Imagine solving a difficult puzzle. Most people stop the moment they find an answer, but an analytical mind asks, "Is there another possibility? What evidence did I miss? Could I be looking at this the wrong way?" That habit creates doubt, but it's productive doubt. It protects people from becoming overconfident. Ironically, research has repeatedly shown that people with lower ability often overestimate their knowledge, while highly intelligent people tend to underestimate theirs. Why? Because intelligence reveals complexity. The more you understand, the more you realize how much remains unknown. That's why genuine experts rarely speak in absolutes. Instead of saying, "I know everything," they say, "based on the evidence," or, "as far as we currently understand." They remain open to new information, not because they're uncertain, because they're honest. Real intelligence isn't about always being right. It's about always being willing to learn. And finally, sign number 11. You never stop learning. School ends. degrees end, jobs change. But for highly intelligent people, learning never stops. They don't learn because someone tells them to. They learn because curiosity refuses to disappear. One week they're reading about neuroscience, the next, astronomy, history, economics, ancient civilizations, human behavior, philosophy, artificial intelligence, music. They don't collect information to impress people. They collect it because understanding the world feels deeply rewarding. Their bookshelf grows, their search history becomes unpredictable. Their conversations become more interesting because every new idea connects with dozens of old ones. That's how innovation happens, not by knowing everything, but by connecting ideas that most people never think to combine. And here's something fascinating. Many of history's greatest thinkers weren't experts in only one field. Leonardo da Vinci studied art, engineering, anatomy, nature, mathematics, and countless other subjects. Their greatest strength wasn't simply intelligence, it was relentless curiosity. Because curiosity is the engine that keeps intelligence growing. So, what do all 11 signs have in common? They aren't about having perfect grades. They're not about memorizing facts. And they're certainly not about proving you're smarter than everyone else. Real intelligence is quieter than that. It appears in the questions you ask, the patterns you notice, the empathy you feel, the mistakes you're willing to admit, and the curiosity that keeps pushing you forward. If you recognized yourself in several of these signs, don't let your ego grow. Let your curiosity grow, because intelligence isn't a destination. It's a lifelong process of learning, unlearning, and learning again. The smartest people aren't the ones who think they've reached the finish line. They're the ones who know. There will always be another mountain to climb, another question to ask, another mystery to understand. So instead of asking, "Am I smart enough?" try asking, "Am I still curious?" Because curiosity, more than any IQ score, is what transforms potential into wisdom. If this video helped you see yourself differently, leave a comment below. Which of these 11 signs describes you the most? I'd genuinely love to know. And if someone came to mind while watching this, share this video with them. It might help them recognize strengths they've overlooked for years. Don't forget to subscribe for more psychology documentaries that explore how the human mind really works. Until next time, stay curious, because the more you understand your mind, the more clearly you'll understand the world around you.